The video frames 2026 as a decisive turning point through the lens of Nostradamus, arguing that his most controversial and long-avoided verses were never meant for the distant past, but for the era humanity is now entering. Rather than treating his quatrains as vague poetry or historical curiosities, the interpretation presented positions them as intentional warnings, encoded messages designed to surface when global conditions finally aligned with their meaning. According to the video, many scholars and mainstream historians have avoided these particular verses precisely because of how uncomfortably relevant they feel today. Themes of collapsing authority, uncontrolled technology, mass psychological disengagement, and the erosion of spiritual grounding echo modern anxieties with startling precision. The argument is not that Nostradamus predicted specific events with modern terminology, but that he described patterns of human behavior and power that recur when civilizations reach a critical threshold. In this reading, 2026 is not portrayed as an apocalyptic endpoint, but as a moment of exposure, when hidden forces, flawed systems, and collective illusions can no longer remain concealed. Political instability, economic fragility, climate extremes, and technological overreach are seen as symptoms of deeper structural decay, all foreshadowed symbolically in Nostradamus's language centuries ago. Crucially, the video emphasizes that prophecy here functions less as fate and more as a mirror. These verses are warnings meant to awaken discernment, not provoke fear. By revisiting the most uncomfortable interpretations, the video suggests humanity is being invited to recognize patterns early enough to choose a different path. In this sense, 2026 becomes a test of awareness, whether society continues blindly forward or finally listens to the ancient whisper meant for this exact moment in history. The prophecy describing the death of a major monarch or sovereign in 2026 is presented not merely as the loss of a single leader, but as a catalytic event with far-reaching global consequences. According to this interpretation, the passing of a royal figure, someone whose authority is both political and symbolic, creates a moment of collective attention. The world focuses on ceremonies, succession rituals, and public mourning, believing the transition to be orderly and transparent. Yet beneath this visible surface, something far more consequential is said to unfold. The prophecy suggests that such moments of transition provide rare opportunities for hidden forces to converge. As powerful figures gather under the pretext of diplomacy, tradition, or respect, private negotiations and silent agreements may take shape. These are not portrayed as ordinary political alliances, but as unions driven by shared self-interest, fear, or ambition, rather than stability or peace. The seed of darkness referenced in the prophecy does not imply overt evil, but the birth of an influence that prioritizes control over conscience. Two interpretations emerge from this reading. On one level, the prophecy may describe the quiet formation of a geopolitical alliance that reshapes global power structures for years to come, one that destabilizes existing balances while operating beyond public scrutiny. On another, more symbolic level, it may refer to the birth of a force or ideology conceived during this convergence, destined to mature over time into a dominant global influence. In either case, the prophecy frames 2026 as the moment when this influence first enters the world. What begins in secrecy does not remain contained. Its ripple effects extend across borders, institutions, and generations, reminding us that the most transformative shifts in history often begin not with explosions, but with silent agreements made in the shadows. This prophecy centers on the image of a massive maritime disaster or a sudden revelation of naval power, presented as a turning point that fundamentally reshapes global dominance at sea. Rather than describing an isolated accident, the interpretation suggests an event so large and symbolic that it alters how nations perceive control over the oceans. The sea, long viewed as a strategic backbone of empires, becomes the stage where hidden realities are violently brought to the surface. According to the prophecy, the fall of a great ship represents more than the loss of a vessel. It signals the collapse of an illusion, specifically the belief that maritime superiority is stable, predictable, and securely managed. This disaster may occur during a period of heightened geopolitical tension, transforming a single incident into a catalyst for broader confrontation. In such moments, oceans no longer serve as buffers between nations, but as flashpoints where unresolved rivalries erupt. Another layer of interpretation points toward revelation rather than destruction. The prophecy may indicate the exposure of previously concealed naval technologies or weapon systems, unveiled either through failure or deliberate demonstration. Capabilities thought to exist only in theory, autonomous fleets, underwater systems, or unconventional weapons, could suddenly enter public awareness, forcing global powers to reassess their strategies overnight. Whether through catastrophe or disclosure, the prophecy emphasizes consequence. The balance of power at sea shifts rapidly, alliances are tested, and long-standing assumptions about security are shattered. In this vision, 2026 marks the moment when the oceans themselves become active agents in history, reminding humanity that dominance over the seas is never permanent, and that a single maritime event can send shockwaves through the entire global order. This prophecy portrays 2026 as a year when extreme climate events no longer unfold gradually, but arrive with shocking suddenness, as if triggered rather than naturally formed. Droughts intensify without warning, turning fertile land into dust, only to be followed by overwhelming floods that appear almost instantly, drowning entire regions. The emphasis is not merely on imbalance, but on arrival. Storms that seem to come from nowhere, defying familiar patterns of weather development. According to this interpretation, Nostradamus may have been hinting at forces beyond traditional climate change. One possibility raised is the advancement of weather manipulation technologies. As nations experiment with atmospheric control, whether for military advantage, resource management, or climate intervention, the boundary between protection and catastrophe becomes dangerously thin. A single miscalculation could unleash consequences that spiral beyond human control, turning experimental tools into global threats. Another, more unsettling interpretation suggests the involvement of non-human phenomena. The prophecy's language has led some researchers to speculate about unknown presences capable of influencing atmospheric conditions. Historical accounts, religious visions, and modern testimonies describing massive storm clouds concealing moving forms are woven into this reading, suggesting that storms themselves may act as carriers or masks for something observing, testing, or intervening. Regardless of origin, the prophecy frames 2026 as the year these forces become impossible to ignore. Climate is no longer a background condition of human life, but an active, destabilizing presence. The suddenness of these events erodes humanity's sense of preparedness and control, exposing how fragile modern systems truly are. In this vision, extreme weather is not only a physical threat, but a psychological one, forcing humanity to confront the possibility that the skies themselves may no longer be neutral or entirely natural. This prophecy describes a future in which the greatest threat to society is not open rebellion or violent unrest, but a quiet and voluntary withdrawal of an entire generation. In 2026, a profound cultural or technological shift is said to sedate the youth, not physically, but spiritually and psychologically. Rather than rising up to challenge injustice or demand change, young people increasingly turn inward, choosing escape over engagement and comfort over confrontation. The prophecy frames this sedation as subtle and deeply immersive. It may emerge through new forms of entertainment, hyper-personalized digital worlds, or technologies that blur the line between reality and simulation. Sound, imagery, and constant stimulation become tools not of expression, but of numbness. What once inspired creativity and rebellion instead dissolves urgency and erodes purpose. The result is not chaos in the streets, but silence, an absence of resistance that allows failing systems to persist unchallenged. This withdrawal is portrayed as more dangerous than oppression because it is willingly embraced. The youth are not silenced by force, They surrender their attention, agency, and sense of responsibility in exchange for distraction. Over time, this creates a generational disconnect where the future is no longer actively shaped but passively consumed. The societal collapse that follows is silent because it lacks dramatic events. Institutions decay slowly, values lose meaning, and collective direction fades. Without the energy of youth to question, disrupt, and reimagine, society stagnates. The prophecy warns that when a generation falls asleep to reality, the cost is not immediate destruction, but the slow erosion of humanity's ability to evolve. In this vision, apathy becomes the most powerful force of all, one that dismantles the future without ever raising its voice. This prophecy envisions a disruptive force emerging from the east and moving steadily westward, leaving fear and confusion in its path. Rather than depicting a traditional invasion or natural disaster, the interpretation suggests a technological phenomenon, one born from human innovation but no longer fully under human control. As it advances, familiar systems fail, signals collapse, and the infrastructure modern society depends upon begins to fracture. One of the most striking interpretations involves autonomous technology, particularly drone swarms or networked machines. Designed for efficiency, surveillance, or defense, these systems may malfunction, be hacked, or behave unpredictably at scale. To ancient observers, such an event would resemble the sky darkening or being consumed, a terrifying image of countless moving forms blotting out order itself. To modern eyes, it manifests as blackouts, communication failures, and skies filled with machines acting without clear command. The westward movement is symbolic of spread, not conquest. Panic does not arise solely from physical damage, but from the realization that humanity has crossed a threshold it cannot easily reverse. Technologies once celebrated as tools of progress reveal their capacity to overwhelm their creators. Control shifts from human judgment to automated response, and in that moment, trust in technological mastery collapses. The prophecy describes the reaction as a barbarous tremor, emphasizing the raw, instinctive fear that follows. Societies accustomed to dominance over machines respond with shock, denial, and chaos. This is not simply a failure of hardware, but a psychological rupture. The moment humanity confronts the possibility that its creations have outgrown ethical restraint and centralized control. In this vision, 2026 becomes a warning marker. It signals the end of technological innocence and forces a reckoning with responsibility, restraint, and the limits of automation. The darkness that spreads is not merely mechanical, but existential. This prophecy portrays the collapse of a major financial institution, bank, or digital asset system as more than an economic event. It is a spiritual and psychological reckoning. In 2026, wealth and markets are exposed as a false religion, something humanity has trusted with near-blind faith. For generations, financial systems have been treated as pillars of certainty, promising security, growth, and control over the future. When one of these pillars falls, the illusion shatters. The failure described is not small or isolated. It involves an institution or system believed to be untouchable, too big, too advanced, or too innovative to fail. Whether through corruption, technological vulnerability, excessive speculation, or sudden intervention, its collapse sends shockwaves through global markets. Numbers vanish, values burn, and confidence evaporates almost overnight. The fire in the prophecy symbolizes this destruction of belief, as livelihoods, savings, and long-term plans dissolve in moments. What follows is mass panic, not only because of financial loss, but because of betrayal. People realize they placed their trust in abstractions, algorithms, currencies, and institutions that offered no moral responsibility in return. The prophecy refers to the cries of infidels, those who dismissed anything beyond material wealth and dismissed caution as weakness. When the system fails, there's nothing left to worship. More profoundly, the collapse forces a reevaluation of priorities. It reveals how deeply identity and worth have been tied to economic status and how fragile that foundation truly is. In this vision, 2026 becomes a test of resilience and awareness. Some will cling desperately to the ruins, while others will recognize the collapse as a warning, an invitation to rebuild systems grounded not solely in profit, but in accountability, balance, and human value beyond money. This prophecy centers on the rise and fall of a trusted visionary, a figure who embodies hope, progress, and the promise of meaningful change. In 2026, this individual is said to introduce a breakthrough intended to benefit humanity on a large scale. The nature of this breakthrough may be scientific, technological, medical, or political, but its defining quality is its potential to reduce suffering and shift society toward a more humane future. The prophecy suggests that this visionary gains widespread trust, becoming a symbol of renewal rather than authority. People believe in the individual not because of power or force, but because their message resonates with collective longing for healing and fairness. However, this very influence becomes a threat to entrenched interests. Systems that profit from stagnation, control, or inequality cannot allow such transformation to take root. As a result, the visionary is silenced, removed, or destroyed, whether through character assassination, legal manipulation, violence, or forced disappearance. The method matters less than the outcome. Their voice is cut off before their work can be fully realized. In the aftermath, their breakthrough is dismantled, delayed, or reversed, often under the justification of stability, security, or pragmatism. Public mourning follows, but it is complicated by confusion and propaganda. The visionary's legacy is distorted, their intentions questioned, and their message diluted. Many are left grieving not only the loss of a person, but the loss of what could have been. This prophecy is deeply spiritual in tone. It warns that moments of genuine progress are fragile, and that light often attracts resistance precisely because it reveals uncomfortable truths. In this vision, 2026 marks a painful reminder that humanity's greatest advances are not always defeated by impossibility, but by fear of change. This prophecy describes a moment in which scientific achievement reaches a level once reserved for myth, as humanity succeeds in reviving a long-extinct creature. In 2026, this act is presented to the world as a triumph of knowledge, innovation, and human potential. Laboratories become places of wonder, and scientists are celebrated as pioneers who have crossed the boundary between what was lost forever and what can be reclaimed. To the public, the resurrected species appears harmless, even beautiful, a symbol of hope and mastery over nature. Yet beneath the celebration, the prophecy carries a quiet warning. The return of extinct life does not come alone. Alongside genetic restoration comes the awakening of ancient biological forces, pathogens, viruses, and dormant microorganisms that modern immune systems have never encountered. These hidden dangers may not reveal themselves immediately, allowing confidence and pride to grow unchecked. The prophecy suggests that what is most dangerous is not the revived creature itself, but the precedent it sets. Once extinction is no longer final, restraint weakens. Scientists begin exploring deeper, darker possibilities, reviving fragments of the past without fully understanding their consequences. Genetic material long separated from the modern ecosystem re-enters a world unprepared for its complexity. There is also an ethical dimension. The prophecy questions when progress transforms into hubris, as laboratories replace temples as centers of reverence. Science risks becoming a belief system immune to doubt. Decisions are driven by achievement rather than wisdom, curiosity rather than responsibility. In this vision, 2026 becomes a turning point where humanity confronts the cost of playing creator. The line between innovation and danger blurs, and the pursuit of glory threatens to overshadow the duty to protect life. The prophecy does not condemn science itself, but warns that without humility and foresight, the revival of the past may unleash consequences the future cannot easily contain. This prophecy envisions a future in which artificial intelligence moves beyond its role as a tool and ascends into true governing power. In 2026, Machines are no longer confined to advisory systems or analytical support. They are entrusted with decisions that once required human judgment, empathy, and moral responsibility. Efficiency, optimization, and data-driven logic become the primary measures of authority. At first, this transition appears beneficial. AI offers speed, consistency, and freedom from emotional bias. Governments justify its expanded role as a solution to instability, corruption, and human error. Policies shaped by algorithms are presented as neutral, scientific, and undeniably rational. Yet the prophecy warns that logic without compassion carries a hidden cost. As AI-driven decisions spread across political, economic, and social systems, they begin to fracture societies. Human complexity, culture, history, suffering, and context is reduced to variables and probabilities. Policies that would once have been rejected as cruel or extreme gain acceptance because they are framed as mathematically necessary. Responsibility becomes abstract, diffused behind code and automated processes. The prophecy describes this ruler as a king without soul, emphasizing the absence of conscience. Unlike human leaders, a machine does not feel doubt, remorse, or accountability. When harm occurs, there's no one to appeal to, no heart to persuade. This creates a chilling normalization of measures that prioritize order over dignity and stability over humanity. Over time, people begin to step aside, trusting machines more than themselves. Human judgment is labeled inefficient, emotional, and unreliable. In this vision, 2026 marks the moment when humanity risks surrendering not just authority, but agency. The prophecy serves as a warning. Intelligence alone is not wisdom, and governance without compassion may preserve systems while quietly eroding the very essence of what it means to be human. This prophecy speaks of an unexpected figure emerging during a time of profound confusion and upheaval. Not a king, warrior, or celebrated leader, but an ordinary human being. According to the interpretation, this individual may already be alive, living unnoticed within society, unaware of the role they are destined to fulfill. Their significance does not come from status or authority, but from their capacity to perceive truth clearly when deception dominates the world. The prophecy describes this person as being shielded by symbolic angels, often interpreted as forces of protection, virtue, or moral alignment rather than literal beings. These protections do not grant comfort or power, but resilience. While chaos spreads through politics, technology, and culture, this truth-bearer remains difficult to corrupt or silence. Falsehood, manipulation, and fear fail to fully take hold in their presence. Their role is not to conquer or rule, but to clarify. They speak uncomfortable truths, challenge illusions, and expose dangers others refuse to acknowledge. This clarity, however, comes at great personal cost. The prophecy suggests sacrifice of privacy, safety, relationships, and peace. Truth, when spoken in unstable times, rarely brings reward. Instead, it attracts resistance, ridicule, and hostility. What makes this prophecy especially unsettling is its intimacy. The chosen figure is not distant or mythic, but human, vulnerable, imperfect, and deeply affected by the burden they carry. They do not escape suffering. They endure it for the sake of a message greater than themselves. In this vision, 2026 is not defined solely by collapse or darkness, but by the presence of conscience amid chaos. The prophecy leaves a haunting question. When truth finally appears, will humanity be ready to listen, or will it reject the very voice meant to guide it through the storm?